had always believed that some things were untouchable, like the love of family, like the promises whispered at my parents' bedside. After my father passed, and then my mother, I clung to the one thing that had always felt like mine, the inheritance they left me. Years of hard work, secret savings, and careful planning had gone into it, and now it was supposed to be my lifeline, my launch pad into adulthood, the proof that my parents' love wasn't just words. I shouldn't have gone to the garage. I shouldn't have peeked behind the hedge as I drove up that morning. But curiosity, or maybe instinct, tells you everything before it's officially revealed. And there it was, my sister, gleaming under the sun, laughing in the driver's seat of a brand new luxury car, the kind I had only ever dreamed about. My stomach dropped, my hands trembled. I couldn't even form the words as I approached, my jaw tight, my heart hammering like a war drum. Surprise, my sister chirped, oblivious to the storm brewing behind me. She had always been the golden child, the one who never had to work, the one who could charm her way out of anything. And now, apparently, she was the one who deserved what had been mine. I turned toward my parents, searching for the explanation that would make this feel like a mistake, something accidental. But their faces were calm, almost proud, like they'd done something heroic. "Don't you like it?" my mother asked, her voice sweet, but my gut twisted in response. It's beautiful," I said through gritted teeth, my voice betraying nothing but a polite lie. Who paid for it?" My father's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, and then he shrugged. "We did, sweetheart. We used your inheritance." The words hit me like ice water. My inheritance, the thing I had been counting on for years, the money that symbolized my parents' love and my future. It was gone. Gone, spent on a car for my sister, who had never once asked me how I felt about anything. My stomach knotted, my vision blurred, and a scream built in my throat that I couldn't release. "Your sister needed it more," my mother said softly, her tone meant to soothe but only fanned the fire. "It's for the family. You'll understand someday." But I didn't understand. I couldn't. The betrayal was too raw, too deep. My parents, who had always preached fairness, kindness, and the importance of family, had turned on me in the cruelest, most calculated way. The money wasn't just money. It was trust, it was recognition, it was love, and they had stolen it. I wanted to storm out, to throw every accusation I had at them, to make them feel even a fraction of the devastation I felt. But something held me back. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was the fear that, no matter what I said, they would never see me, would never understand that this wasn't just about a car. It was about every little moment they had overlooked, every slight that had piled up until it became a mountain. So I stayed silent, standing there as my sister hugged my mother, giddy and unknowing, while my chest burned with a cocktail of grief and fury. I wanted to cry, to punch, to scream, but I forced myself to breathe, to think. I realized then that this betrayal was not just about money. It was about power, about control, about them deciding who deserved love, who deserved attention, and who didn't. As I walked back to my car, the engine cold under my hands, I made a quiet promise to myself. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. If my parents thought I would vanish into bitterness, swallowed by their favoritism, they were wrong. I would survive this, I would endure, and when the time came, they would see that I was more than an inheritance. They had underestimated me, and that would be their greatest mistake. The sun glinted off the hood of that car one last time as I drove away, my heart heavy, but my mind sharp. Betrayal had a way of forging strength, and mine was just beginning. The house was silent when I returned, not the comforting silence of a home at rest, but the heavy, suffocating silence of everything I had trusted being ripped from my hands. I stared at my room, the familiar posters on the walls, the little trinkets I'd collected over the years, all feeling strangely foreign. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal, it was intimate, it was deliberate, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been invisible all along. I sank onto my bed, my head in my hands, the weight of everything pressing down like a stone. Then my phone rang. The screen showed a name I hadn't heard in months, Grandma. Her voice, always so warm and grounding, came through the line, thin and fragile, yet somehow sharper than I expected. "My dear," she whispered, almost trembling, I heard what happened. I froze. She knew. Somehow, she knew everything. The betrayal, the injustice, the way my heart felt like it was splintering into pieces. They took your inheritance, she said simply, as though the words themselves were an anchor. And in that moment, my tears welled up. I hadn't expected her to see me. I hadn't expected anyone to. But she did. I don't know what to do. I admitted, my voice breaking. I can't even look at them without feeling this rage, this hurt. Grandma sighed, a soft, shuddering sound that seemed to carry decades of wisdom. I know, my child, I know, and I'm so sorry, but listen to me carefully, because I won't be here forever, and you need to hear this now. She paused, the silence stretching, heavy with meaning. I hung on every word, desperate, almost afraid to breathe. Your parents, they've always had their favorites. Your sister, she will always get what they think she deserves. But you are stronger than you realize, and more clever. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. You need only yourself. Her words hit me like a spark to dry kindling. Validation, finally. Someone who saw the injustice not just for what it was, but for the impact it had on me. And Grandma, what do? I whispered, almost ashamed of my desperation. She chuckled softly, though it was tinged with sadness. Oh, my dear, that's the fun part. You wait, you watch, you learn, and when the time is right, you act, not with cruelty, mind you, but with precision, with dignity, with a touch of poetic justice. Make them see, even if only in their own hearts, that they underestimated you. Her words, frail as her body, were fire to my soul. I felt a flicker of strength I hadn't felt since the moment I discovered the betrayal. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my identity, my self-worth, my voice in a family that had silenced me for too long. I think I understand. I said, my fingers gripping the phone tightly. I have to be smart. I can't just lash out. I need to make it count. Yes, she whispered. And remember, my love, revenge is sweetest when it is clever, when it teaches a lesson without staining your soul. Watch, plan, and wait. You have more power than you think, and I've left you keys. Her voice faltered, and I imagined her frail figure lying in hospice, tubes and machines humming around her, yet still commanding strength that spanned generations. Promise me, she said, her voice barely audible. Promise me you will not let them break you. Promise me you will rise not just for yourself, but for all the years they overlooked you. I promise, Grandma. I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I promise. We hung up, and the house felt quieter than ever. But this quiet was different. It wasn't suffocating. It was focused. It was deliberate. I could feel a plan beginning to take shape, a path forming from the rubble of betrayal. I would not be the powerless child anymore. Not today, not ever. Grandma's call had ignited something in me, a spark of cunning, a glimmer of hope, and a simmering sense of justice that was patient, intelligent, and unavoidable. The betrayal had been cruel, but it had given me a gift, clarity. I looked out my bedroom window at the street below, where the sunlight reflected off my sister's car, the very symbol of what had been taken from me. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't just anger. It was purpose, and I would make them pay. In the most unforgettable way possible. After Grandma's call, I felt different. Not lighter, not happy. This wasn't forgiveness or closure yet, but sharp. Focused, like a predator, finally noticing the weakness in its prey. I couldn't erase the sting of betrayal, and I didn't want to. It would serve me, guiding every step of what I planned next. I started small, observing. Every glance, every word, every careless habit of my parents and sister became data. My sister, oblivious and spoiled, flaunted the car like a badge of triumph. My parents, smug and self-satisfied, assumed I'd vanish quietly into bitterness, my resentment harmless. They had no idea how closely I was watching. I made a list, not of what I wanted, but of their weaknesses. My mother's obsession with appearances, my father's fragile ego, my sister's arrogance and entitlement. The way they all underestimated me. I scribbled notes late at night, hiding the notebook under my bed like it was a weapon. Every family dinner, every small interaction became reconnaissance. I learned what excited them, what frightened them, what made them vulnerable. And I thought of Grandma, her words echoing. Revenge is sweetest when it is clever. when it teaches a lesson without staining your soul. I didn't want chaos. I wanted justice. Poetic, unforgettable, undeniable justice. I began laying the groundwork. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't flashy. It was subtle. I discovered my father's pride in his perfect image could be manipulated. My mother's obsession with social recognition was another lever. My sister's entitlement, that was almost too easy. She could be bait without even realizing it. Every day, I planted small seeds. I complimented my sister on the car while asking pointed questions about how it had been purchased. I mentioned casually to my parents that I had heard about new investment opportunities, hinting at financial acumen they'd dismissed in the past. I tested their reactions, watched their eyes, their hesitation, their pride slipping without them noticing. I also started reclaiming control of my own life. I focused on my career, my savings, my reputation. I polished skills my parents had always dismissed as frivolous. I became meticulous, organized, and quietly unstoppable. Revenge wasn't just about them. It was about proving to myself that their betrayal didn't define me. And yet there were moments I struggled, watching my sister gleefully flaunt what was mine, overhearing my parents' self-congratulatory remarks, feeling the unfairness like a knife twisting deeper. But I learned to temper it. Anger alone is dangerous. It burns the one holding it. I learned patience. I learned timing. I learned control. I began imagining scenarios, each one carefully crafted to strike a nerve, to expose their arrogance, their favoritism, their blindness. Not publicly, not cruelly, but in a way they would feel, deep inside, where their pride and sense of superiority lived. I wanted them to recognize, finally, that I had been underestimated for too long, and then I found the perfect leverage. A long-forgotten promise, a financial loophole my father had neglected, a secret my sister had carelessly revealed in her arrogance. I smiled when I realized it wasn't just revenge. It was elegant. It was satisfying. It was mine. I made a plan, every step, every interaction, every word carefully timed, nothing reckless, nothing wasted. My parents and sister thought I was hurting silently, dissolving into bitterness. Little did they know, I was constructing an intricate web. Grandma's voice kept guiding me. Patience, my dear, control, power, and when the time comes, strike with precision. Make them see who they really underestimated. I closed my notebook that night, my heart racing with anticipation. I wasn't just preparing to reclaim what was mine. I was preparing to teach a lesson, to deliver justice that was long overdue. The betrayal had been cruel, the injustice deep, but now I felt invincible. I had a plan, a purpose, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the game was mine to win. And when the moment came, it wouldn't just be revenge, it would be a revelation. The day finally arrived. Months of careful planning had led to this moment, the culmination of every whispered observation, every patient wait, every subtle maneuver. I wasn't going to lash out in anger. I was going to act with precision, and it would sting them in the only way they truly understood, through their own arrogance. The family gathered for what they assumed was a typical Sunday lunch. My sister, still glowing from the car she believed marked her triumph, prattled on about it endlessly. My parents, oblivious as ever, nodded and smiled, their pride in their generosity, blinding them to the storm they were about to witness. I arrived with calm, measured confidence, carrying only a folder of documents and a small, polite smile. Nothing about me betrayed the fire that had been building for months. I set the folder on the table and waited for the right moment, letting curiosity do its work. "Are those your papers?" my mother asked with a dismissive tone that I remembered all too well from my childhood. "Yes," I replied softly, deliberately. I thought it was time to go over a few family matters, financial matters. Their eyes flicked to each other, confusion beginning to take root. My sister, sensing a new kind of tension, leaned forward with a smirk. "Oh, this should be good," she said, clearly expecting drama, but not the kind that would strike her where it truly hurt. I opened the folder and began. Slowly, deliberately, I laid out everything I had uncovered. The discrepancies in their finances, the negligent handling of investments, the forgotten promises of my inheritance. I detailed every oversight, every favoritism, every careless assumption they had made. My words were calm, almost gentle, but each revelation landed like a hammer on their carefully curated pride. My parents' faces shifted from smugness to shock, to disbelief, to dawning horror. My sister's smugness faltered, her confidence trembling as she realized that the very privileges she had taken for granted had been manipulated, exposed, and turned against them. Not with cruelty, but with undeniable truth. I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle over the table. "You thought I would disappear quietly," I said softly. "You thought I would let this go, but I've learned, I've grown, and I'm stronger than you ever imagined." My mother's lips parted, but no words came. My father's fingers fumbled with the edge of the table. My sister's face, once smug, was pale with a dawning understanding. And then, with the final piece of subtle genius, I revealed the key. The car, purchased with what had been mine, had a hidden cost. Legal and financial complications my parents hadn't foreseen. The glamorous gift now carried consequences, carefully timed and unavoidable. It was a masterstroke of poetic justice, executed not in anger, but in clarity and foresight. For the first time they saw me, not as the quiet, overlooked child, not as the shadow of my sister, but as someone capable, intelligent, and unassailable. My heart swelled with quiet triumph. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about recognition. Recognition they had denied me for too long. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Grandma, fragile and trembling, yet triumphant in its brevity. "I knew you had it in you. Well done, my dear. Love always." I smiled, feeling a warmth that no betrayal could touch. Revenge had never felt sweeter, not because it was cruel, but because it was precise, elegant, and just. I hadn't lost myself in anger. I had reclaimed my voice, my power, and my dignity. My parents and sister were silent now, the weight of realization heavy in the room. They would never forget this day, not the embarrassment, not the lesson, not the undeniable fact that I had been underestimated at every turn. I gathered my folder, closed it calmly, and stood. "I hope this helps you understand me a little better," I said. My voice was steady, measured, triumphant. I left the room, feeling the light of victory warm my chest. It wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about proving that I was worthy of recognition, love, and respect. And in that quiet, satisfied triumph, I finally felt at peace. Betrayal had come into my life like a storm, but I had turned it into a strategy, a lesson, a triumph. And as I walked into the afternoon sun, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about breaking others. It's about rising stronger than anyone ever imagined.